Alrighty, people, so I wanted to talk about what role Koshi Nakanishi will play for RE9. I think you have to really go into his previous work to understand what this director has done, but he's worked on RE5 as a designer, and he's worked on the Revelations series as a director, and he also worked on Resident Evil 7 Biohazard as a director, and he also has a creative background for creative director in Resident Evil The Mercenaries 3D. With that combined, it seems like he has like a good enough experience to understand the action horror side a little bit if he designed some things for RE5, as well as harkening back to horror. We know this with Revelations 1, where that feels like a much more deliberate and slower paced OTS game, where you're walking around with Jill and the Queen Zenobia. I think that's the name of the ship in that game, but it's a lot more scary and horror based on the use and the various monsters within and limited resources. I remember fighting the Skag Dad and almost dying because I'm like, okay, this Mayday captain here is really sucking up and absorbing all my bullets, and he can also make these fleshy bear traps where Jill can get caught in them. And I thought that was a really intuitive fight. Like, most of the boss battles in Revelations 1 were very kind of cool and interesting. And then we move on to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Now, I gave this game a lot of flack initially. I thought it wasn't going to work. I thought it was too far-fetched. I thought that I was one of those people that was like, you know, where is Chris? Where is Leon? Where is Jill? Where is Ada? Who is Ethan Winters? I was definitely one of those people where I was not on board with the initial concept, but after playing the game for a feverish amount of time, I got hooked. I got compelled. I'm like, okay, this is where Resident Evil needs to be. And they talked about this in the interview as well. They said after RE6, right? This was when the series had an identity crisis. We didn't know what we were doing. It didn't resonate a lot with the people, with this whole multi-layer package of doing like an action game that upped the ante to 11 as far as it went with Resident Evil 6. And what people missed with the RE franchise is the horror, is the scares, is the spooks within. And I believe Nakanishi decided, fuck it, we're going back to the drawing board, we're gonna do this all over again. What makes Resident Evil creepy, atmospheric, scary, barely any ammo, survival horror elements, going back and fighting like strong creatures where you know nothing about whatsoever and you're thrusted into the situation. That's what I liked a lot about RE7 Biohazard, harkening back to what I loved previously and having homages to like Evil Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I thought that was pretty cool. Nakanishi did not work on Resident Evil Village. He was not the director of that at all. That was like Saito who directed Resident Evil Village. Village is a lot more action based. There's only one scary segment, and that's the one with the baby, but otherwise that's it. That game is like very, very light on the scares, as opposed to Resident Evil 7 being a lot more slower, methodical, etc. I think that is important for the design philosophy of Resident Evil 9, but it's going to be kind of hard considering he talked about this being substantial, and I believe this ties into bringing in the older reoccurring characters. How do you put them into a situation and make it creepy, make it horrific, make it scary? And one of my suggestions was that, of course, these characters, they know how to fight, right? Leon, Chris, Jill, they know how to scrap with the best of them. But aging them up significantly with the timeline changes and the timeline jumps that we had recently, where it's like, oh, we went 15 years into the future with Rose's like story and the epilogue and everything. Making these characters older and still fight bioterrorism, maybe with some new people, some new NPCs, would probably bring some sort of mortality rate, as well as maybe they could pull into some of the rumor pool with like how some of these monsters are doing like mimicry and shape-shifting and you don't know who is who. I think that would be a great game. You know, pull from The Thing. The Thing was a perfect premise. They're remastering that, by the way. I'm so fucking hyped. And pull from The Thing and make that game where it's like you don't trust anybody, you don't know what's going on in this little rural village, and it makes things like a lot more creepier and scarier, and your teammates are like starting to close in on you. You can't trust each other. I think that would be a great premise if they decided to do something like that. So the scares are going to be probably plentiful if this is the director who's done games like Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. We also have to remember that this is Resident Evil. The virus is always evolving. Like, we got fucking T-Abyss, we got all this stuff on the market. We have the C virus, which was a mixture of the G virus and the T Veronica virus. You can make some crazy, insane new strain that Leon, Jill, or Chris have never encountered before. They never prepared for, and that's one thing you're going to want to do. Is you have these very strong, colorful characters. How do you challenge them? You make the virus even stronger. You make things even more unpredictable with what they see. And I think that would be a great challenge for those characters, because they're already, like, let's be honest, they're kind of like the ones that have like a lot of plot armor to begin with. You challenge that by making things even stronger, by bringing in more threats. And hell, if you want to put the coup d'etat on it, you could bring back Wesker. Like, at this point, just say fuck it, bring back Wesker, do something crazy, or make a villain that's like similar to him. Like, do the whole Alex Wesker thing where she's immortal and you could have that challenge there. Like, I don't think the Resident Evil protagonists have ever fought an immortal person, so that'd be very interesting to see. I mean, again, you have the building blocks there with Alex Wesker from Revelations 2, so you can go in either direction. I mean, you can have both of them in the same game at the same time, Alex and Albert, one revived and one revived with the immortality virus. Even if like one doesn't agree with all of these ideas, I think we can all agree that Resident Evil 9 needs to feel like a big closer, because it is at the end of this new trilogy. It is after RE7, it is after Resident Evil Village, and now this is the chapter where we're closing off this first-person trilogy, so why not try to end off as big as possible, while also taking some significant risk. I think that's what this game still needs to do in this whole story and design paradigm. And of course, no matter if you love it or hate it, Resident Evil 7 saved the franchise when it was at its lowest point, when it was mostly just all action, straight up, Umbrella Corps, straight up, just like nobody wanted that. Now we're harkening back to something possibly slower pace and scarier, and I think Nakanishi will do a good job at that, considering I was also like taken aback, like, hold on, this guy did not work on Village, but he's probably taking all of the storylines created in Village and trying to migrate everything from Village, from RE7, and make a proper conclusion with Resident Evil 9, and that's the best thing we could hope for at this rate. My video right here is done talking about Nakanishi. I wish him the best of luck, and of course, one more little nugget of information, one more little tidbit. I would say two, actually. Number one, he's worked on Jill before. He's worked on Revelations, so you know, like, maybe Jill could come back, and he knows, he understands the wrapping of the character a little bit. That could factor into this new game. It seems like Jill's having a little bit of a resurgence, considering Resident Evil Death Island, she was the main character of that story. And then secondly, this will signify they are working on multiple projects, because Nakanishi said in an interview that he was not part of the creative process or the development team of Resident Evil 2 Remake at all. And remember, a lot of games during this time, remakes and a main entry and other entries, they were being all made like simultaneously. At least the ideas and everything was being drafted out, development and everything. This goes to show my earlier theory that if Nakanishi and his team had nothing to do with Remake 2 and he was solely working on RE7, we're gonna get multiple RE projects nearing 2025, 2026, and I could not be any more excited due to that premise. Remember, Dev 1 is huge. They're working on a lot of shit. So guaranteed, just because he said like one Resident Evil game, one mainline game is in development, does not mean that we're not getting more in terms of remakes. Anyway, I am signing out. My name is Renegade Operative. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed this follow-up video to my RE video from yesterday. In the comment section below, I'm going to paste all the videos you can watch that I covered on RE9 and general theory chats, discussions, everything, and hopefully you guys really love it. I'm going back on vacation. I will see you guys next time. Later, and don't let the zombies bite.